I didn't hit the brakes because I saw anything. I hit them because my gut did that rabbit kick it does when you know you've screwed up and your body reacts before your brain. That jolt is exactly the shape of my life. I'm not a good driver. I'm careful now the way an ex-biter is careful with their tongue. Constantly checking, constantly feeling for the edge that'll cut me open again. I park far away from everybody else. I roll up to stop signs like I'm apologizing. I keep my hands at 10 and 2 like an old driver's ed poster. And if I hear the car scrape, I don't pretend it was a leaf. I pull over. I look. I own it. That afternoon still had sun in it. A late gold that made the storefront windows look cleaner than they are. I took a ride out of the strip mall like I'd taken 1,000 times, misjudged the angle by maybe 2 inches, and the passenger wheel rode up and fell off a curb with a rubbery thump. That's me, 2 inches off and paying for it. I sighed loud enough to fog the windshield, slid back into an empty space, and got out to inspect the damage. The tire had a chalky kiss on the side, but nothing worse. No valles, no slow hiss. I ran my fingers along the rubber just to feel the reassurance of it. But there, in the gutter, was a chunk of stone about the size of a loaf of bread. For one brain twitch of a second, I thought I'd ripped a piece of the curb out, and I was already rehearsing the conversation with whoever runs those stores. I'm sorry, I'll pay. Do you want me to take photos? But the curb was whole. This piece didn't match. The curb was poured concrete, pale and pitted. This thing was darker, a granite speckle like dead snow. It wasn't just a rock. You know how people with no art training will carve things anyway, and you can still tell what they meant? The chunk had the suggestion of a leg in it. Calf, maybe. The foot was the kind of foot a kid would draw. 5 robin's egg dots for toes, stuck on the end of a lump. The surface was too smooth in places, rubbed down like a river stone. Other parts were jagged, where it had been broken off something bigger. I looked around like there'd be a missing statue, a pedestal with an empty pair of ankles. There was a nail salon, a pizza place, a running store with a mannequin in a neon tank top that weirdly made me think of someone who would absolutely judge my shoes. No statues, no granite, just that piece on the street where I'd rolled over it. I didn't want someone else to hit it. That's the part of me I'm trying to nurse back to health. Don't pretend, don't shrug, don't leave the mess for someone else. I lifted it. It was heavier than it looked, dense, cold, the kind of cold that eats up the warmth in your hands and laughs. I put it in my trunk, told myself I'd find a dumpster behind the grocery store and get rid of it. I shut the trunk and made a mental note. I'm very good at making mental notes, putting them on the right shelf, even. A week went by. You know how weeks go. Coffee burned my tongue on Monday. HR scheduled a casual check-in for Wednesday that made me sweat through my shirt by Tuesday. I woke in the middle of the night to eat cereal like a divorced dad, even though I've never been married. That's important for later. Or not. I don't know anymore what winds up matching. And that's maybe the worst part. When even your own life refuses to highlight the relevant lines. The memory came back because a bag shifted. I came in too hot at a 4-way, stomped a brake, and something heavy rolled in the trunk. I flinched so hard, I shoulder-checked the headrest. My heart tried to crawl out of my mouth. There was no impact, no scream, no crumple, but my brain screamed anyway, and as soon as my tires started rolling again and the guy behind me laid on his horn like I'd insulted his bloodline, I realized what it was. The rock. I laughed once, a hiccup noise. I lifted a palm like sorry, my bad into the mirror, and got the finger for my trouble. I pulled into the apartment complex where I was headed. There was a dumpster by the leasing office that always stank like hot bananas. I parked, popped the trunk, and reached in. There were 2 pieces. For a beat, I thought the leg had split. But the leg was there, intact, dumb toes and all. Next to it, a separate chunk. Same granite. Same smooth places and violent breaks. This one had a hand. A lazy open palm, like it was waiting to be filled with water. The fingers weren't fingernails and knuckles so much as suggestions, softened like they were being remembered badly. I stood there with both hunks of someone's bad art in my hands, thinking about whether I'd grab more than I meant to that day. The curb. The rush. My sloppy memory. I could have. I could have picked up one, then bent and grabbed another. I could have told myself I'd only grab one because that's what I prefer about myself, that I'm the kind of person who disposes of exactly one problem at a time. I might have convinced myself of it. Actually, I might have stamped it into the floor of my skull as truth. Except there was a third piece, leaning against the side of the dumpster like someone had propped it there in case I didn't see it. Bigger than the others. Less obvious. If the limb pieces were the ones even a child would label, this was the piece an art teacher would force you to look at too long. It was a cylinder with bite marks. No clean sides left. In the afternoon light, the granite freckle shone just enough to make it look sweaty. I nudged it with my foot and felt the scrape through the sole of my shoe. You ever slide two broken pieces of plate together and feel that nasty little satisfaction when the fracture lines kiss? The leg hugged the big piece in a way that made my stomach drop. The arm did too. The big chunk was a torso. Most of one, the shoulders sheared off on one side where the right arm would have been, ribs suggested but mushy, like the sculptor started with a good plan and got tired. I did what a responsible idiot does. I got rid of it. All three pieces went into the dumpster, hefted in with both hands, the weight of them fighting me until gravity did the rest with an ugly, hollow boom. I backed my car into a spot 3 buildings away, told myself I'd done my good deed for the week, and checked the trunk before I went home that night like I was checking the oven. Empty. By the time 2 more weeks put their dead weight on my neck, the whole thing was a story not worth telling. The world is full of stupid, little coincidences that don't chime. Maybe I'd overthought it. Maybe some teenager had seen me toss the first piece and decided to mess with me. Maybe the maintenance guy had fished it back out and left it leaning because it wouldn't fit with the couch someone had illegally dumped. The rest of my life kept going. Emails, toothpaste, a nail that snagged every pair of socks I own. Then I reversed into something at work. I was the last one out. The office lights go dead at 6, and the parking lot floods my brain with the kind of quiet that makes your hearing invent things. I shifted into reverse and felt the car ride up and down on something that wasn't a curb, wasn't a parking block. There was no car behind me. The mirrors gave me asphalt and the yellow eyes of cats skulking under the hedges. The crunch didn't belong to any normal thing. I parked crooked and got out with my keys hooked in my fingers like claws. That's the shape fear takes when you pretend you're not afraid. The statue was laid out behind my bumper like I'd set it there myself. Leg, arm, torso, and a spray across the asphalt that made my skin tighten. The head was gone except for pieces. Granite freckles everywhere. An ear cheekbone wedge. An egg-shaped eye socket fragment. A sliver of the nose like a shark fin. I had to squat with my hands on my knees because it felt like someone had hit me a second time, this time in the middle of my chest. It would have been easy to leave. I told myself that. No plate to exchange with a piece of art. No cop to wait for. It was rock. The lot was empty. I could have driven around it and woken up in the morning with a clean story. I could have let the landscaping crew sweep it into their bin and never thought about it again. I got my trunk open. I picked up the leg. I picked up the arm. The torso fought me like a drunk. The head fragments gleamed meanly in the overhead light, and I gathered them with the sick patience of a child sifting pebbles at the edge of a lake. I didn't stop. Everything went into the trunk. The biggest chunks in a lumpy pile, the freckled shrapnel poured into a canvas grocery bag I keep back there for when I forget to bring one inside. When I was done, there wasn't a glimmer left on the asphalt. The lot was clean like nothing had ever happened. I drove home with the weight of it behind me and felt it every time I shifted gears. The car creaked like it had a secret it wanted to tell me but didn't dare. I parked too close to the stairwell door. I killed the engine and watched the way the garage light bounced off the dust on my dash. My hands were gray. The granite leaves a film on you. It's fine as flour but colder. When I washed my hands at the kitchen sink, the water turned into something I didn't want to look at. You want me to say I slept? I didn't. I lay on my back and listened to the refrigerator hum and the upstairs neighbor's late-night bath and the air in my apartment doing what air does. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the broken eye socket fragment. You could tell it was an eye even though it was nothing. That's the part one hate. how suggestion can be more powerful than precision. The next morning, I put a drop cloth down in my living room and carried the pieces inside in trips that left me breathing like I jogged in January. The bag of small fragments clinked like teeth. I set everything out. There's a pattern you learn quick when you try to reverse a breaking. Big to small. Anchor the spine. Fill in the guts. Leave the face for last. I don't know why that part felt like a rule, but it did. Memory is full of rules we don't admit we follow. And here's the thing that will make you think I'm making this up. I knew how it went together. Not like I'd seen it before, like I had a manual somewhere in me. I turned a piece and my hands found the notch. I fitted an arm and something inside me relaxed. Not my brain, not even my body, something deeper. Click, click. The epoxy fumes made my tongue feel like I'd licked batteries. The instructions said to wear a mask and do it in a ventilated area. I cracked the windows and let the January air hurt me. My eyes watered. My hands shook. The pieces kissed and kissed and kissed until there was a body on my drop cloth, torso and left arm and left leg and a shoulder stump where the right was missing and a bag of face left for later. I pressed the last big chunk into place and felt a relief that tasted like metal. I took a break because I had to. I switched the radio on. Static. For some reason, I left it there. It felt like if I landed on a song I recognized, I'd pull the wrong thing into the room with us. I tell you all this so you'll understand the part that makes me sound insane. I didn't just want to fix the statue. I needed to. It was my mess. My tire had turned a head into grit that stuck to my palms. Everything in me kept saying, put it back, make it whole. And underneath that, a quieter voice with a different accent, one I don't own. You were supposed to, remember? I don't have great lungs. The epoxy made me cough in the crook of my arm until I saw stars. I went into the kitchen to get water and found a yellow sticky note stuck to the fridge by the calendar magnet I use for dental appointments. It wasn't my handwriting. It didn't look like anyone's handwriting. It looked like someone had been taught to draw letters from memory and botched it. It said, procedure drop, transit. Keep the cabin temperature below 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Never set the fragment on bare soil. Mirrors or instruments, cover them until assembly concludes. If you hear tapping from inside the trunk, do not respond. Before dawn, offer water. The sticky note had a greasy thumbprint on the corner. Just one. I put my thumb over it and the size was wrong. The print was longer. If it had belonged to a real person, I would have known they had those pianist hands people comment on. Something about the rules made my body relax. Yes, I thought. That's right. Those are the rules. I taped a bath towel over the bathroom mirror and another over the cheap, full-length mirror on my bedroom closet. I turned the thermostat down until the apartment wore its own breath. I went back to the living room and, obedient, I didn't set any fragment on the floor. It stayed on the drop cloth only like a raft. Water. Offer water. What does that even mean? I poured a glass and set it on the coffee table. For who? For what? It didn't matter. It mattered. I know how this all sounds. I hear myself. I'm not going to convince anybody who doesn't want to believe me. Believe this, then. Hold this up to the light. The rules would have looked idiotic at noon. In that cold blue hour right before dawn starts pretending it's a color, they felt less like advice and more like remembering that you need to breathe in to breathe out. I pulled the towel over the TV too. The black screen is another kind of mirror. While I was doing that, my phone buzzed in the kitchen with a text from my friend Kelsey. Meet you out front in 10. She runs on my schedule when she needs to vent, and I run on hers when I need a distraction. We trade anxiety like recipes. I texted back, rain check. And because she's Kelsey, you okay? I typed, working on something. Then deleted it and typed, I will be. Then deleted that too and sent nothing. If you've ever done that dance, you know the exact weight of guilt it gives your shoulders. I kept working until the sky peeled open. I peeled open with it. Every time I reached into that bag of face fragments, my fingers went numb and came back tingling. I laid out the biggest pieces. The eye socket half, the cheek, the broken nose. I didn't want to see the mouth. The idea of a mouth waiting in there made my stomach pitch. Mouths should never be hard. They should never be stone. When the sun finally did the polite thing and showed up, I stepped back. The thing on the drop cloth wasn't a person. Even if the sculptor had been brilliant, something about it would still have been a smear. It was half-sized, like an adult seen across heat or a child too far away, both wrong in different ways. The left foot was planted, turned slightly like it meant to start walking. The fingers were open like the statue was reminding you it had 5 of them. Everything soft in me wanted to name it. I didn't. The apartment was cold enough that my breath ghosted. I went to the sink and filled another glass of water without letting the faucet run too hard. I put the glass next to the first one. I didn't drink any. My mouth felt like a mouth someone else had lent me. I washed my hands with dish soap until my knuckles matched the granite. The towel over the bathroom mirror lifted at the corner and dropped like it had sighed. I stood there holding my wet hands above the sink and waited, not because I thought anything would appear in a mirror if I looked, but because I knew I wasn't supposed to. The next day at work, I was the guy who keeps rubbing his hands together like he's plotting. The receptionist asked if I'd gotten into insulation again, and I said something like that. She laughed because she thought it was a joke. The security guard from nights, Roland, the one who snaps his gum loud as a gunshot, cornered me on my way out and said, "You know you're on camera backing into something, right?" He said it like a cop in a movie says, "We can do this the easy way." "Piece of trash," I said. "A chair someone dumped." It came out too fast. He watched my face in a way that said he'd had practice reading people who aren't saying all their words. He lifted one shoulder and let it fall. "You pick it up?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, and because fear makes me rude, I added, "You want to ticket me for littering in reverse?" Roland snapped his gum. "We don't ticket. We write incident reports." He tapped his temple with the back of his knuckle. "Some of us are very thorough." "Great," I said. "Write it." My voice didn't shake. That seemed like a victory until I got in the car, and my hands left damn prints on the steering wheel. When I got home that night, I smelled something in the hallway I couldn't place at first. It wasn't curry from 2B, or weed from 3D, or bleach from the laundry room. It was the chalk sour smell of a playground slide on a cold day. My door had a sticky note stuck above the peephole, like a halo. It was the same strange handwriting, same greasy mark. It said, "Don't whistle." I took it down and stuck it to the inside of the door, the way people put up postcards from places their friends visit. It looked worse there. I didn't whistle, not because of the note, because my mouth wouldn't shape it. Inside, the statue was where I'd left it, in the middle of my living room. But everything in the room had shifted a little, the way it does after someone cleans. The cups of water were at different angles. The towel over the TV had sagged more than it should have under its own weight. My phone faced down on the table, though I don't remember flipping it. The air was colder. Somewhere in the pipes, a little tap-tap sounded and stopped. I added epoxy to the shopping list I keep on the counter, and painter's tape because I'd run out taping towels over mirrors, and a box cutter because mine had gone missing from the drawer. While I was writing, my eyes kept going back to the rule note on the fridge. One of the lines had faint smudges at the edges like someone had run a finger over it a lot. Never set the fragment on bare soil. Why soil specifically? Why not the floor? Why not the trunk? Why not my idiot hands? I pulled my phone toward me with one finger and called Kelsey. She answered with "You alive?" like she'd been holding it in all day. "Yeah," I said. Then, because she knows when I lie unless I give her something to chew on, I asked, "You ever get weird rules stuck in your head? Like you know them before someone tells you?" "Like OCD," she said, gentle. "Not like that," I said. Like the way you somehow know how to behave in a funeral home you've never been in. The way you drop your voice without meaning to." "You okay?" she said again. And this time it sounded like a real question, not a greeting. "There's something in my living room," I said, and the way she didn't laugh made me love her, like in the truthful way, not the rom-com way. "It's a statue," I added in case she was picturing a raccoon. "Pieces of one. I'm fixing it." "You," she said. "With glue. Epoxy." I corrected. "Industrial. You're making an art project out of street garbage because..." "What?" You hit with your car and felt bad? Is this an atonement thing? Yes, I said. No. I looked at the smudged line on the rule note again. Yes. You want me to come over? No, I said too quickly. Then I softened it. It's cold. The apartment's weird. I don't want you in here. Okay, she said. But if this turns into a you started sleeping at work and forgot to tell me situation, I'm kidnapping you. I laughed because not laughing would have made me cry. Deal, I said. Love you, she said, breezy and real. I almost said it back because I have learned how to be a human in the world. But my mouth remembered the sticky note and couldn't make the sound. Don't whistle. Don't whistle. I hung up instead and put my phone face down again like it needed to cool off. Night makes rules heavy. By 11, the apartment felt full of instructions. I sat on the floor at the edge of the drop cloth and looked at the bag of face fragments like it was a bag of seed I was too tired to scatter for birds I didn't even believe in. Every now and then the building's heat kicked on and the vent sighed. Under that, a softer sound, the kind your ears don't get paid enough to notice. Talp, 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 I said out loud. From the pipes. I said it again like a spell. From the pipes. I don't know when I fell asleep. I woke with my cheeks stuck to the drop cloth and the kind of neck pain that makes you reevaluate your choices in life. The room had the new morning smell of things that have changed while you weren't looking. The cups of water on the table were empty. Evaporation, I told myself. Cold air can do that overnight. Science is a bully if you ask it to be. I went to the sink. The faucet coughed the way my car had. I filled 2 glasses and set them down again, feeling like a medieval servant doing something I didn't fully understand for a lord I'd never meet. On the way back from the kitchen, my heels skidded on something that caught no light until you were on it. A shard the size of my thumbnail. Granted, it stuck to the pad of my finger when I picked it up, clung there like a scab. I turned it over. It had a curve to it that felt like it belonged around another curve. I put it down on the drop cloth near the bag of face and took a breath that tasted like a penny. I kept going to work because that's what you do when you're afraid you'll become the kind of person who doesn't. Showing up becomes religion. The receptionist asked about my hands again. This time I said, art project, and she said, cute, which hurt more than it should have. Roland didn't look at me. That hurt less. I made an incident report of my own in my head. Subject appears normal. Subject speaks. Subject walks. Subject carries a body home in pieces and pretends it's recycling. If you're waiting for the first time, something obviously supernatural happened. It was this. I came home on day 3, and the towel over the TV was taped tight again, edges crisp. I don't own painter's tape. I meant to pick some up, but I'd forgotten. Blue tape held that towel like a bandage. There was a roll of blue tape on the table. The price sticker said a store I don't shop at. I lifted the tape and felt that ugly satisfaction again. Click, kiss, fit. Painter's tape. Fracture lines kissing. The same pleasure, different material. The way the human brain is a factory for ritual. I should tell you about the argument. It's important because I want you to see me as I am, not as the version of me that would make this easier to swallow. I called my sister that night because I was lonely and because I wanted someone to say, throw it away, in a voice she used to use when she'd tell me to spit gum out before her mother got home. She answered from the car. You could hear the engine and the tired in her. What now? She said. Not unkind, just used to me. I've got a problem, I said. Rent, she said. Work? You finally hit somebody. No, I said. No, I looked at the statue. The skin on my arms got tight. I broke something and I'm fixing it. Good boy, she said. You don't even need me for that. What if fixing it makes it worse? I asked. That's therapy, she said. And families. And everything. There are rules, I said. And the beat after that was so quiet I could hear her blinker. Please don't join a cult, she said softly. I don't have time for you to be interesting. Not like that, I said. Like instructions that came with it. Keep it cold. Cover the mirrors. Offer water. I didn't mention the soil. I didn't mention the tapping. I didn't mention the greasy thumbprint. I don't know why. It felt like I'd be telling secrets. Is it an animal? She asked. Are you secretly fostering a bat? It's stone, I said. I hit it with my car. She went quiet, so long I thought the call had dropped. Then she said, "This one's on you." That wasn't unkind. It was like a benediction. "Be a grown-up," she added, "and stop calling me at weird times." I hung up angry. Not at her, at the way she was right. You wanted to throw you a bone and say I did the smart thing? I didn't. I doubled down. I opened the bag. I sorted the face. It got easier and worse both. The face had the most pieces and the most gravity. When I placed the cheek, the whole room felt like it leaned. When I set the edge of the left eye socket, I had to sit back and breathe through my nose like a woman giving birth on TV. Every time I paused, the apartment made a small sound like it was thinking. It was very cold. The glasses kept emptying in the night. On the fifth day, a new sticky note appeared on the fridge below the first one. The handwriting was worse, like it had tried to be more like mine and failed. It said, "Rule 3, never lay it on its back. Rule 7, don't shave in the same room. Note, if the mouth is incomplete after dark, sleep at a friend's." The second rule sounded like a joke until I pictured tiny hair clippings falling onto granite and felt a panic so sharp I almost threw up. I'm not a beard guy. I had nothing to shave. It didn't matter. I stared at the note until my eyes saw letters as shapes again. Don't lay it on its back. The statue had been on the drop cloth since day one, propped a little by books, so it leaned forward like it was about to get off the couch. I touched the shoulder. Stone is all the same temperature at first touch, unpersonal. After a while, your skin learns it. I slid a folded towel under the shoulder stump to keep the chest up. It felt like adjusting a pillow for someone who isn't sleeping. Mouth, incomplete. After dark, sleep at a friend's. The language was wrong. Not or, not maybe, if, then. I didn't call Kelsey. I didn't sleep elsewhere. I finished the mouth at 3:11 in the morning with my hands shaking so hard I nearly glued my index to my thumb. When the last curve slid into place and the seam filled, the air shifted like a room shifts when someone leaves it. I sat there on the floor and cried, hard, the dumb, ugly kind that makes your face buckle. I pressed my fist to my mouth and breathed through my fingers and said out loud, "It's okay," to nobody and to the thing I'd made again. At dawn, there was a thin wetness at the statue's lips. For a mad half-second, I thought it was saliva. It wasn't. Condensation from the cold apartment and my hot, sad breath. Physics again. I wiped it with the hem of my shirt like it was a child with milk on its mouth. I took a photo. My hand looked wrong holding the phone, too big and too small at once. The picture was useless. The statue never looked like anything but itself. If I handed you the photo right now, you'd say, "What am I looking at?" And I want to say, that's the whole point. That's the thing about it. It took being there to understand the shape of wrong it was. The next set of notes didn't appear on the fridge. They were in the trunk of my car, taped to the inside lid. I found them because something was tapping. I had popped the trunk because I was going to put in groceries. Plastic bags full of oranges and toilet paper and a frozen pizza that sweated as soon as it saw my apartment's air. The lid rose and the smell of cold stone came up to meet me. The notes were in the same bad handwriting, on printer paper. The tape was that cheap beige stuff that curls at the edges. Operational. If you go out after midnight, use the passenger door. Never check your reflection in the rear view when you're at a red light on an empty road. If there's knocking from the trunk and you're alone, keep driving. If you're not alone, pull over. Do not whistle. Offer water before dawn and after rain. One of them had a coffee ring on it. One of them had a water stain the shape of a continent I didn't recognize. The trunk was empty, but for the drop cloth I'd left there and the residue of granite dust that nobody else would ever notice. I pressed my palm to the inside of the trunk lid and felt the hum of the car vibrate through the metal. It felt like a throat. Okay, I know. The rules. The notes. The statue. If I'm lying, I picked weird details to lie about. Who lies about tape? Who lies about water rings? Maybe the parts I'm emphasizing are the parts that saved me. Maybe I'm a coward trying to give you enough detail to make you a witness, so I don't have to be the only one. Maybe this is my incident report. I made the mistake a week later of being tired and mean at the same time. I ran late at work. The receptionist made a face when she thought I wasn't looking. Roland was absent, and the new night guy, a kid with a patchy beard, waved me through the gate with the kind of respect you give a clueless uncle. On the drive home, the red lights were friendly. The roads were empty. I looked in the rear view of my own eyes because I wanted to see something I recognized. They looked back wrong. Not like a monster, not like a stranger, like a video call where the audio lags and your mouth finishes the sentence half a second after your words. My eyes were where my head went, but too slow. I flinched. The car drifted. I jerked it back with a curse and my heart in my mouth. When I looked again, the mirror just gave me the normal, tired, sad face of a man who glues rocks together at night. I laughed out loud alone in the car, twice vicious little barks. I said, "Get a grip," like I was spitting. The tapping started then. 2 knocks, a pause, 1 knock. Like a polite person at a door. I kept driving. The road soaked up my headlights and offered them back worse. 20 seconds later, knock, knock. A little louder. "No," I said to the car like I would to a dog, nose encounters. "No." At the next intersection, I rolled to a stop at the red light. The town was emptied of witnesses. The window glass reflected nothing helpful. The rear view hung there like a black coin. I did not look at it. I looked at my hands instead, fingers wrapped around the wheel. They were granite dusted in my head, even though they were clean. I thought of the rule. If there's knocking from the trunk and you're alone, keep driving. If you're not alone, pull over. I was alone. I kept driving when the light went green. Half a mile later, I saw a figure by the side of the road near the bus stop that's just a sign and an empty napkin blown against it. The figure stepped into the edge of my headlights, hand up like a hitchhiker, and then a step back like it had changed its mind. I slowed without thinking because people do that. People are motion. The figure put its palm up, and I saw the splayed fingers, and my foot hit the gas like a reflex. The world made that acceleration sound video games do. The figure didn't jump away. It didn't have to. It wasn't in the world where tires mattered. It was an idea of a person half-sized and smeared, and for a second it matched the shape of my living room perfectly except for the right arm that hung too long and too wrong. By the time I made it home, the mirror towels felt like talismans instead of trash. You don't know how religious you are until you're clinging to a towel. I slept with the lights on and the thermostat at 62. I did not whistle. I didn't even hum. I put a glass of water near the statue's feet and another by its hand and a third across the room because I'd misread something and thought 3 was significant. The mouth looked different in the morning. Not open, just softer. The seam along the upper lip had dried clean. That felt like a win. Day by day, I found company rules to put next to the strange ones. Work once. You know how that goes, right? You keep to the arbitrary office rituals because if the dumb ones save you, maybe the real dumb one will too. I didn't walk under the extension ladder. I didn't eat the yogurt someone left unlabeled. I didn't start a meeting at 00. I always made it 05, so people had time to pee. I looked both ways leaving the parking garage, even though the only thing that ever comes there is a maintenance golf cart. I told Kelsey I was okay. She didn't believe me. She came over anyway one Wednesday with a bag of soup in plastic tubs and pretended she hadn't seen the towels over the mirrors. She pretended she didn't see the statue because there's a kind of friendship where you let the other person show you things at the pace they can stand. "What's in the museum exhibit?" she asked, nodding at it with a smile that had teeth. "Punishment," I said, and because she was looking at me nodded, she heard the joke. She let it go. We ate soup. She told me about a fight she'd had with her boss about time off. I told her about a fight I'd had with my sister about nothing. Neither of us mentioned the cold. Neither of us mentioned the way the room felt full of elbows. When she left, she kissed my cheek like we're European now. Her lips were warm. I stood there with the door cracked, watching her go down the hallway. A sticky note was stuck to the stairwell door 3 floors down. It had fallen and restuck. My brain tried to read it upside down. I closed the door and put both palms flat against it like I could push the world back out through wood. At 3 that morning, A sound woke me that was so light it should not have woken me. It was the sound of my phone vibrating face down on the table. A buzz, a tiny hop. I turned my head slow because turning fast felt like it would cause something to happen I couldn't undo. The phone danced to the end of the table and stopped because the painter's tape roll acted as a chalk. New voicemail from a number I didn't know. The transcription read, "Ineligible transcript." I hit play, listened to the hiss, and then a voice that sounded like a cassette played in a cold room said, "Offer water," and then, so soft I could taste it but not hear it, my name. I threw the phone into the laundry basket because that's where I throw things I don't know where else to put, and watched it thump to a stop against a shirt I haven't folded in weeks. When I picked it back up, there was a new photo in my camera roll I didn't take. The photo was of my own front door from outside, as if I'd leaned in, put my eye to the peephole, and snapped. The little circle of glass warp made the hallway look wrong. You could see the sticky note above the peephole from the other side of the wood. It was blank. I wanted the peephole. The sticky note above it on my side of the door said, "If you hear tapping from inside the trunk, do not respond." That line had slid up from the fridge to the door on its own. I don't know when. I put my eye to the peephole anyway, because I am exactly the kind of man who reads rule, do not, and does it once to prove that he can survive ignoring it. The hallway was empty. Of course it was. Of course it wasn't. There was a shadow on the carpet near the stairwell that didn't belong to any banister I knew. I took my eye away and put my forehead against the door and stayed there until the wood warmed. I'm telling you all of this because I need you to understand that what happened next wasn't a single bad decision. It was a practice. It was a discipline. It was an offering. It was me admitting I broke something and it wanted to be whole, and I had to be the one to make that true. I didn't put any of this on Kelsey or my sister or Roland or the receptionist who laughed at my awful joke. I dragged a folding chair into the living room and sat. I breathed. I waited. I took responsibility because that's the religion I chose. The mouth was done. The face was almost there. The right temple was a puzzle piece I couldn't find. The bag was empty of pieces I didn't recognize. The line where a right arm would connect stayed severed. The torso leaned toward me like someone listening too hard. I checked the trunk one more time before bed. Empty. The note still taped up there. The smell of cold and old stone. When I shut the trunk, I realized there was a thin smear of dust on the bumper the exact color of my living room. My alarm went off at 6:15. I hit snooze 3 times. On the 4th, I threw the phone across the room and immediately wanted to apologize to it. I dragged myself up. The apartment was colder than it should have been. My breath smoked. There were damp footprints on the drop cloth. Not shoe prints. Border. Half-sized. 5 splay toes. I put my hand down next to one, and the size difference made my chest burn. I laughed then, a bad, dry bark. "Okay," I said to nobody. "Okay." I filled a glass with water and put it next to the damp print like I was leaving milk for a ferry. I kept my voice steady. "I'm going to work," I said to the room and to the shape of a person inside a blur. "I'll be back." In the parking lot, Roland was back. He tipped his head at me in a way that could have meant anything. I said, "Mornin'," like I was anyone. "You got a new dent," he said. "Where?" I said, stomach dropping. "Front quarter," he said. "Passenger side." I walked around the car, and he was right. A crescent, low, where a child would bump if they leaned on your car to see inside. I raised my head. The upper levels of the garage showed bright rectangles where cars that mattered lived. Mine was a dark gap on level 2. I told Roland the truth. "I don't remember that," I said. He nodded slow. "Most people don't," he said, and I had no idea what he thought we were talking about. I didn't go straight home that night. I drove to the big box hardware store with the bad fluorescent lighting and bought more epoxy and a better mask and a weird little kit labeled Stone Repair, contains pigments. The cashier rang me up and said, "You building a grave?" and then laughed immediately like sorry, wrong mouth noise. I said, "Reassembling," and she blinked at the word and handed me the bag like she didn't want to know what that meant. In the car, I sat with my head against the steering wheel and watched my breath fog the windshield for a while. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from a number I didn't know. Bring it outside. I texted back, "Who is this?" The dots that mean someone is typing appeared, and then stopped, and then appeared, and then stopped the way people do when they're deciding whether or not to tell you the thing that will end the night. Then, not in there. Soil. I typed back, "No." The reply came immediately. Good. I deleted the whole thread like I was saving myself from future embarrassment. The dent in the front quarter panel felt like a bruise on me. I went home. The hallway smelled like cold chalk again. The sticky note by my door had fallen to the mat. I picked it up and slapped it back, and my fingers left a gray fingerprint on the yellow that wasn't the shape of my own. The living room had shifted again. I felt it before I saw it, like the weight distribution on a boat. The statue leaned more. The right temple had a piece now. It wasn't a piece I put there. It fit perfectly, a kiss smack you could feel in your own skull when you looked at it. The mouth looked like it might say something if you got closer. I didn't. I went straight to the kitchen, opened the cabinet where I keep mismatched glasses, and got one that used to be a jelly jar. I filled it and set it down in front of the statue without ceremony, because sometimes that's the only way to do ritual, like it's nothing. I folded myself onto the couch like my bones belonged to someone taller. I put the mask on because the epoxy was back in the room and I didn't want to die stupid. I mixed pigment into glue. I touched seams. I muttered to myself like a lunatic. Not words, just the shape of words. Outside, a car honked in the way of men who imagine that horn is an extension of their jaw. Inside, the tapping started again. Not trunk, not pipes. From the wall behind the couch. 3 knocks. A pause. 2. I did not answer. The rules aren't laws because they're true. They're true because you treat them like laws. This is where the story would end if this were a reasonable world. This is where I'd tell you the statue stood up or fell apart or asked me for water in a voice that sounded like gravel in a throat. The truth is quieter and worse. The truth is that I pressed the last face piece into place at 4:08 a.m. with epoxy under my nails and stone dust in the corners of my eyes and my living room cold enough to sting, and when it clicked, when the face was whole, the tapping stopped. The relief made me drunk. I slid down the couch to the floor and lay on the carpet beside the drop cloth, not touching it, never laying the statue on its back. And I fell asleep with my mouth crooked open like a child and dreamed I was lying on a beach of granite gravel and every stone had my name on it in that wrong handwriting. When I woke, the glasses were empty and the air tasted like an old freezer. Outside, the sky was a pale bruise. Inside, my apartment was filled with a presence that wasn't a person and wasn't a sound and wasn't a smell. The statue was a shape you could walk around now without tripping. My eyes didn't know where to sit when I looked at it. Every time they landed, the statue was elsewhere, not moving, just never exactly where my brain had placed it. That's a trick light can play, but light doesn't care about rules. I do. I kept following them. I'm not the best driver, but I am excellent at following instructions if it means getting to say. I fixed it. I made a hole. I did the right thing. I'm telling you this now because I have to finish. I'll finish. I know exactly how it's supposed to look. I've seen it before. I left you on the floor by that blur of a thing because I thought the quiet meant I'd earned it. That's the kind of mistake I make, thinking silence equals permission. It held for 3 days. Work, soup, blue tape, water glasses that emptied on their own like I was the laziest host. Then the rules changed without telling me they were changing. It started with my phone waking me at 2:19 a.m. with a calendar alert I didn't set. Transit window. The title sat there glowing, the chime already dead, and the description was blank except for a little block of Unicode square that shows up when your device can't show the right character. I thumbed it away, rolled over, told myself to sleep or at least hold still and pretend. The apartment's cold clung to the inside of my nose. The glasses on the table were fogged like little lungs. In the quiet, a new sound entered the set. Not tapping, not pipes, a kind of polished scrape. Stone moving over cloth. My eyes snapped open like someone had tugged a thread under them. I didn't look. I listened. The sound came in threes. Slide, stop. Slide, stop. A breath between the room and me sharing it. I propped myself on an elbow slow enough not to scare anything in my old childhood superstition. Don't move fast in the dark or you'll break the dark was back in my body like it had been living there all along. The statue wasn't where it had been. It hadn't moved far. It had leaned. The lean had direction now like a dog pointing. Not at me. At the door. I hear you, I said because saying nothing would have felt like lying. The sticky note above the door had a new line in the same, trying to be handwriting. Before transit, cover glass with cloth, not paper. Underline under cloth. I caught myself thinking, poor thing, like the note had tried to be polite about it. I got up, bones complaining, and pulled the towel off the bathroom mirror and laid it over the framed print in the hallway that is glass. I draped a blanket over the TV instead of the towel. I took the note off the fridge and stuck it next to the door note so the rules could be roommates. There was a place for everything if I kept inventing places. I put my hand on the thermostat and let it go. It was already set to 62. The apartment had done that thing old places do at night, where the air feels heavier because it's had all day to think about you. The glasses were empty. I filled them again, doing it quiet, like I was trying not to wake anybody. Offer water. Before dawn. After rain. I didn't know if there had been rain. It smelled like there had been. Chol kvet. Playground slide. I slept again in the way you sleep on airplanes. Your body does it while your mind holds a fake conversation with the idea of sleep so it doesn't feel offended. The alarm yanked me into a morning with a slow, gray light and a new dent in the passenger side door that hadn't been there last night. I knew it wasn't. I check now. I check everything. This dent sat low, like a shoulder had rested there and pushed. I ran my fingers over it and the cold slid into the bones. I looked down at the ground by my parking spot because thinking soil would be a new character in this play and saw granite grit near my front tire that I hadn't tracked. Somebody had moved the world while I was inside it. At work, my incident report lived on the corner of my brain like a post-it I was too depressed to move. I wrote an actual one because Roland, who is more thorough than he gets credit for, sent an email. Please document the prior incident. Attached was grainy camera still, my car backing over dark shapes in a lot that didn't deserve miracles. I filled out the form like a person who pays taxes, printed it, signed with a hand that could make the act look sane, and walked it to the security desk. Roland scanned the top line, daytime, and then met my eyes. He didn't smirk. He didn't gum snap. He said, "You ever hear knocking in your car?" I said, "Weird question." "Yeah," he said. "You hear it." "I keep driving," I said, and he nodded once, a little satisfied like I'd answered the question on his test that saves you from the trap question after it. He held the paper, then slid it back. "Write down that you filed this," he said. "Make yourself a copy." "What?" I asked. "Because if you don't, the universe will pretend you didn't," he said. "And that thing wants records." "What thing?" I said. He looked past me at the doors like maybe he could see through them, down the hall, through the lobby into the street. Things that move between. I did the copy. It felt like a spell. I put it in my glove compartment with the owner's manual and the expired insurance card and the tire pressure gauge I never use. When I shut the compartment, I waited a second to see if something tapped from in there, too. It didn't. You're allowed these private stupidities. They're often the only things standing between you and the other kind. I didn't go straight home. I drove to the strip mall where I'd ridden the curb and found the first piece. It looked like itself in an exhausted way. Nel salon, pizza, running store, a new banner hanging crooked over the space that used to be a phone repair kiosk. Opening soon, something fresh. I parked across 3 empty spots like an asshole because there was no one to see it and because my brain needed a break from niceness. I left the engine running like I'd just be a second. My feet itched to go to the curb, sift, look for a gleam of granite. Instead, I looked at the glass. The windows threw my car back at me. I breathed on the inside of the windshield and traced the shape of my handprint in the fog and made myself feel 12. I wasn't here for rock collecting. I was here because I wanted to see where this began, and what I saw was nothing dramatic. The place I'd ridden the curb was just dirt and dead leaves. The gutter had a clogged throat of matted cigarette filters and fast food napkins. The smear of tire on concrete had faded. That was the first lesson of the day. Not all beginnings mark themselves in ways the camera can read. I drove home with a weird patience, never touching the radio, never looking in the rearview longer than it takes to promise yourself that the car behind you is not a ghost with headlights. The knock started at the red light on Court Street anyway, and I aimed my gaze at my knuckles like they might tell me the weather. Knock, knock, pause, knock. I recited a rule under my breath in the same rhythm. If alone, keep driving. If not alone, pull over. The light went green. I went. The knock came again, and if there was meaning in the timing, I refused to learn the language it was in. The apartment had a new towel over the framed print on the hallway wall. I hadn't put it there. It was taped in that careful blue. The tape had that clean, purposeful line that means someone with a steadier hand than mine did it. I stood under it and thought about who has steadier hands than me, and came up with a list that includes most of the population and a thing made of stone. The statue wasn't in the living room. I didn't panic because I made a choice to pretend I knew where it would be. That's a trick you can do to yourself. Pretend your dread is a plan. I walked into the bedroom where the closet mirror was covered and stopped in the doorway because the shape in the corner by the dresser, shadow inside the shadow, was the kind of absence you feel more than see. It wasn't on its back. It would never be on its back. It leaned forward the same way as in the living room, the same listening or about to stand, and the direction of that lean was new. It pointed at the closet door, behind a towel, a glass. No, I said out loud, because sometimes the only magic word you own is no. The towel was held by 3 pieces of painter's tape. The bottom edge had curled. Air moves around paintings, even when paintings are covered. I pressed the bottom strip to the wall again, and the tape stuck with a little pop. I didn't look past the towel. I didn't touch the towel. I touched the statue instead without thinking, because telling yourself not to do one thing makes your body do something else, a trade. The stone was the same temperature as my hand because my hand had been in this cold a while. I kept my palm there. If you have ever pressed an open hand to an animal's ribs and felt the machinery of inside, you'll understand the chute my stomach fell down when nothing at all moved against my skin, and I believed for exactly 3 seconds that if I waited, something would. I went to the kitchen. I filled a glass. I set it by the statue in the bedroom because now that's where it drank. I didn't ask how it moved from room to room. Sometimes the answer hurts you. Sometimes the answer makes you dumber. There are questions you leave on the counter like a bill you don't open because you know what it says. Kelsey came by that night with the energy of someone who has decided to bulldoze. She had her tote and her eyebrows up and said, "We are going out like that settled it." "I can't," I said. And she looked past me into the apartment, took in the cold, the towels, the water glasses, the painter's tape that had become a domestic animal in my home. "Hey," she said, nodding at the shape in the bedroom that she was not acknowledging directly. "Doesn't need you for an hour. Don't gender it," I said, because that was easier than saying, "Please don't make me leave my post." "Fine," she said. It doesn't care if we get fries." I wanted the small human luxury of salt on my tongue. I wanted to sit in a booth and complain. I also didn't want to break the one rule that was my own. Do not leave it on its back. Do not leave it thirsty. Do not leave it alone when the calendar says transit window. It was evening, not dawn. I could lie to myself about timing. "Okay," I said. "Fast." We did the stupid, gorgeous human things. Put coats on, bickered about whether I could leave the heat at 62, turn lights off, on, off again, walk down the hall with our voices a little too loud because quiet makes you feel tender, put our feet on the first step and stop because a sticky note was on the stairwell door at the bottom. Kelsey got there first because she always moves first and held it up between 2 fingers like it might smear. I didn't have to read it. I knew the voice. I didn't know the rule yet. It said, if you go out after midnight, use the passenger door. "That's not relevant," she said. making it a question, smiling like a person who knows the cute and the strange can coexist. "Tonight," I said. "It might be." "It's 7, she said, eyebrows high. "We're not turning into pumpkins." "I've been getting rules," I said. "They show up." "That explains the towels," she said flat, because when she's scared, she makes jokes that come out like statements. "Also, don't whistle," I said. She rolled her eyes. "You have never whistled successfully in your life." "I know," I said. "Just don't." We took my car because her engine light has been a permanent feature since she bought it used. On the way down the hall, she started to hum because that's her baseline. She hums without meaning to. And I said, "Kells," and she stopped. In the garage, the cold had a smell like old pennies. My car had another new mark, just a smear, like a palm had been dragged along the fender. "Kids," she said kind. "Kids do that." "Kids," I said back. She didn't catch my voice, and I didn't explain it. We got in. I slid into the driver's seat. She popped the passenger door, and as soon as she did, something like pressure dropped out of the car's air, enough that we both looked up at the same time into the rear view out of dumb human reflex. I caught myself before I focused. I got my eyes back where they belonged. She looked, though. Of course she did. She's not on my diet of rules. Her mouth did an O shape she didn't notice. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't even a surprise. It was an O like a puzzle piece had kissed, like somewhere in her head 2 fracture lines touched. "What?" I said, careful. "Nothing," she said, which is how people tell the truth when they don't have a category yet. We drove to a diner that has always been too bright for its own good. We ate fries we shouldn't. We didn't drink. She told me about an email her boss sent that had the word synergy in it, and I pretended it was the stupidest part of my day. I kept glancing at the clock. She pretended not to see me do it. When the rain started, strings first, then sheet music, I felt my whole body break into chills like someone had stepped on my foot. I put cash on the table because waiting for change would have made me feel like I was bargaining with something that hates bargaining. We ran to the car laughing because people do that in rain, even when everything else is wrong. I unlocked her door first because I'm not an animal, and when she threw it open and dived in, the rain blew sheets of cold air into the car, so hard that my breath smoked like I just found out I was alive. The clock on the dash said 11:59. I slapped my palm to the rear view out of habit to angle it, and yanked it back before my eyes could follow. We sat there, doors shut, both of us panting like we'd been chased. And then the knock came from the trunk. Knock. Pause. Knock. Knock. "Nope," Kelsey said, like a person making a boundary. No. "It's fine," I said. "It is not fine," she said. "I'm alone," I said automatically, like I was reading off a cue card. "You're not," she said. "Right," I said, aware that this was the stupidest conversation I'd ever had in a car with rain on the roof. "Right. If we're not alone," she said slowly, "we what?" "Pull over. That's for the road," I said, hand on the ignition. I didn't turn the key. I watched the minute flip. 12 o'clock became 12:01, and the calendar alert that had woken me last night, the blank box that said transit window, folded itself into this minute like a card into a sleeve. "Passenger door," I said, not proud of the way my voice shook. "If we go out after midnight, use the passenger door." "Go out where?" she said, exactly in the voice I'd been using in my head with the universe since this started. "To the curb," I said, which felt both precise and too vague to live. The knock came again, either impatient or just cycling through the rhythm of whatever it is to be stoned wanting something. I started the car. The headlights bounced off the wet garage air like it had particles instead of being just air. I eased into the lane. I did not look in the rear view. Kelsey sat with her hands spread on her knees like an unintentional prayer. "Talk to me about anything else," I said, because when terror is discipline, that's part of the liturgy. Say human things, keep your mouth in the world. She told me about her boss's denim jacket. She told me about a new bakery. She told me about the smell in her hallway last week. Like chalk, she said absently, like a school blackboard after erasing. And I nodded like she'd just handed me the key to a small, locked thing. We cleared the garage. The rain was heavy enough that the lights smeared. Street lights made cones you could stand inside and be baptized. I slid us through them slow. At the first red light, a man in a hoodie stepped out to cross and then stopped because the world is full of people who forget they're human, and held a hand up like he was hitchhiking or stopping me or blessing me. His hand was wrong. It was familiar. Kelsey saw it. She didn't say what I was waiting for her to say. She said, "Drive." I did. The knock calmed, then returned, the way a heartbeat comes back after you swear it has stopped forever. We parked at the strip mall level with the doors, me facing the running store like a threat. Midnight made the whole place look like a stage set. The banner hung slack. The nail salon chairs were little headless people. The pizza place had one slice on the warmer that had decided it would live there until it petrified. "We're not getting out," she said, meaning it. This is the part in the movie where I yell at the screen. "We are," I said. "Fashion's your door." "No," she said, and then the knock came again and she said, "Fine," the way she says fine when she means I choose you. Then put her hand on the handle and looked at me, waiting. "Together," she added. "Together," I said. We opened our doors at the same time and slid out. The rain hit us like tape torn off too fast. The air was cold enough to taste metal. I heard the trunk click and we both flinched. It hadn't popped, not all the way, just that first latch. We met the back of the car and looked at the seam like it was a mouth. I put my fingers under, felt the slick, and lifted. Inside was nothing but the drop cloth and the blue tape roll and the notes taped to the lid in the bad handwriting. "If you're not alone, pull over. Offer water after rain." The empty trunk had the smell of stone, even when nothing was in it. I stood there with rain crawling down my neck and felt the shape of a hand on my shoulder that wasn't Kelsey's and wasn't stone and wasn't the air. I turned to say the obvious thing, and Kelsey beat me to it. "It's not in there," she said. "No," I said, because agreeing is free. She did it then, the thing I told her not to do. She whistled softly, that little two-note automatic whistle people do when they're trying to locate a dog or a thought. The sound died the second it left her mouth, cut like the air refused it. We both froze. Somewhere in the mall, something answered with a note that wasn't a note, but was very definitely not random. "Don't," I said. "Sorry," she said, hand over her mouth like she'd broken fine china and not sound itself. The door to the running store wasn't a door. It was a metal roll-down gate with holes in it for air, and behind those holes, something moved. Do you know what it looks like when you watch a fish move behind glass, and your brain wants to call it smooth, and then the water or the glass or the light stutters, and you see what it really is? That. The shape behind the holes approximated an arm, and then didn't. It found the holes with 5 splayed fingers, and then didn't. It had the wrong height and the right purpose. "We should go," Kelsey said, voice steady in the way that means it'll rattle later. "We can't," I said. "Not yet." I lifted the drop cloth out of the trunk like a shield. Stupid. A gesture is a gesture, even when it's not. I laid it on the wet pavement next to the car because it felt like laying down a ground rule the world could see. Never set the fragment on bare soil. Bare concrete is not bare soil. But the rule had never been about technicalities. It was about obedience. Cloth, then stone. That felt right. "Help me," I said, and we both bent and smoothed the edges like we were making a bed for a guest who doesn't use beds. The gate rattled once. Another gate down the row answered. I got a flash of a story I heard as a kid about saints whose bones you can't move without bells ringing, and my brain made a choice. Make a secular version. Security systems. Wind. Trucks shuttering the street. Maybe the trunk, still open, became a roof. We stood under it and read the notes again, like cramming for an exam we hadn't attended the lectures for. Use the passenger door. Don't check your reflection in the rear view at an empty red. Don't whistle. Offer water. Mirrors are instruments. Cover them until assembly concludes. Assembly concludes, I said, voice a thread. "You said you finished the face," she said, like a question with a knife in it. "I did," I said. "Then why are we here?" she said. The running store gate understood English because it answered me, not her. The holes darkened like something leaned right up against them, like the thing that maybe used to be rock knows how to lurk. I poured water from the bottle I keep in the door pocket onto the drop cloth without thinking. It spread like breath. The air did that pressure change again. The rain heard the cue and went from downpour to thin. My hand was shaking so hard the water came out in arcs. I set the bottle down. We waited. The kind of waiting that makes your spine feel like it might just walk off without you. Something came. It didn't show. I know how that sounds. But the cloth had weight on it that the cloth hadn't had a second to go. The way you can tell someone sits on the bed even if you don't see them sit. The way you can back out of a room and know someone walked in after you left. The drop cloth dimpled. And then that smell, granite, old cold, playground slide. The weight kept shifting. The drop cloth took it and didn't complain. I had the childish thought, good cloth. The gate rattled again and then stopped, not because the thing behind it had left, but because it had decided it wasn't a gate anymore. It was a wall. It was always a wall for people like us. We were not people like it. I put my hand out because that's what I do when I'm too scared to keep hands to myself. Something pressed back through the air, pressure, not flesh, and in my mouth the taste of pennies got stronger. "You want a ride?" I said. "Where?" Kelsey said. "I don't know yet," I said, which was the most honest thing I could say. We got in. Passenger first. I went around. My driver door handle was slick with something that wasn't rain. Inside, the car felt full. The air changed temperature down to the degree. 62. The clock said 12:19. The knock came once mild like a hello. I drove. I didn't ask where, which is the same as asking. The car became a divining rod. It wanted left at the past City Hall. It wanted right where the old rail line sliced the town. I didn't resist because I was very tired. When the car wants something and your brain wants something else, the car wins. We went over the bridge into the side of town that pretends it isn't the same town. Houses went from confident to weary. The rain stopped so abruptly the wipers scraped over dry glass like something small dying. "Are we safe?" Kelsey asked, quiet. "No," I said, "but we're not chosen prey. We're like volunteers." "That's worse," she said. "Yeah," I said. The knock resumed, not on the trunk, on the floorboard just behind my seat. It felt like a child kicking a parent's chair on a plane and not meaning anything by it except I'm alive. I said out loud, "I know," and it quieted. We drove past the school that got turned into condos, past the mural that tries to make everyone feel better about history, past the corner where there are always flowers zip-tied to a post, because once a car did what a car does when someone looks down at their phone. We turned onto a road with no sidewalks. The road rode itself into the woods because that's what roads do when city money runs out. "Are we?" Kelsey started and then stopped. She didn't need to finish. She knew. I knew. The car slowed the way it does when your foot does the thing no part of your brain claims it told it to do. We came to a shoulder that wasn't a shoulder, just dirt brave enough to pretend. It pulled over. The knock stopped. Somewhere out in the trees, water dripped from something that had not agreed to be a leaf. We sat. We didn't speak. The car clicked as it cooled like cars do, the metal telling the air what it's up to. The only light was the dome, dim, because the passenger door had been used and the dome knows more than we give it credit for. I turned the key off and the darkness got thicker in a way I felt behind my eyes. "Offer water," I said, and reached between the seats for the bottle in the back. It tapped my fingers before I found it. The shock of that was less than you think it would be. Living with a thing can shrink the perimeter of your panic. I put the bottle on the floor behind me, cap off, and tipped it, let it glug onto the mat. You know nap time in preschool? How the teacher rubs your back to keep you down. The car made a sound like that, a little soft exhale that somehow belonged to all of us. Something bumped the passenger door then. Not hard, not threatening, just like your friend arriving late to the movie when you've saved them a seat. The rule was clear in my head like it had been scraped there. If you go out after midnight, use the passenger door. I looked at her hands. She nodded. We moved at the same time. We opened our doors. We stepped out. Outside, the cold had hands. It pulled at the edges of our coats and slipped into our sleeves and tried to count our ribs. The woods let us stand there like it was doing us a favor. The car's interior light threw a bubble of light that looked like theater. The passenger side looked into trees. The driver's side looked into more trees. The trunk looked like a mouth when it clicked and opened itself. It did. A little. Just a first latch. We didn't touch it. Kelsey's breath smoked. Mine did too. The drop cloth we hadn't brought was in the trunk anyway, folded the way my mother used to fold towels when she wanted the linen closet to look like a magazine. I didn't ask how it had gotten there. Asking would have been a lie. The sticky notes on the trunk lid had new lines, written over old ones in the same trying hand. Examination site. Do not set on bare soil. Don't lay it on its back. Don't whistle. If there are two of you, one must face away. I'll face away, Kelsey said immediately, because she always takes the less dramatic job if it means I'll do the more dangerous one. No, I said, I will. She rolled her eyes, and if I live another 50 years, I'll still be able to conjure that exact role on command. Boys, she said, Fine. But if something takes your face off, I'm not explaining it to your sister. You won't have to, I said, and meant it in a way I hated. I stepped to the side, turned, and faced into the trees. The words "one must face away" felt like they weren't for fun. My back itched with awareness of the car. The engine ticked like settling bones. The gravel on the shoulder was fat and wet and cold through my shoes. Kelsey kept her eyes on the trunk. She is braver than me because she does her bravery with her mouth shut. The sound that came next was the opposite of the tapping. It was the soft grunt people make moving a couch through a door, except nobody made it. It was the sound of stone being convinced to go where it would go anyway. I wrung my hands like a Victorian and forced them to still. After a while, I don't know, minutes, I felt the thing that happens when somebody takes a weight away that you didn't know you were holding. The car lifted. The night widened. I kept my face in the trees because the trees are the one honest thing left. They say I am here and I'm going to continue being here, and there's nothing you can do about us except cut us down, and then you're the one who will be missing a thing. Kelsey said very quietly, okay, and then, okay, again, like that makes it two different words. I turned back because the rule had said one must face away, not for how long. The space by the passenger door where the drop cloth would have been was not empty. The idea of the statue was there, not whole, not outlined, but the way the eye tries to gather a shape and fails meant the shape existed. The cloth was laid out under it. Of course it was. Water glistened in a shallow saucer. Of course it did. And there, filling in the absence I had left under the right temple, was a shard I hadn't had. The shoulder stump where the right arm would connect had new edges that were not mine. I reached for the face because it is human to touch the face first, and Kelsey slapped my hand down without looking at me. Don't be dumb, she said. I know, I said. It wants you to finish it, she said. And I said, I know. And then, no, because the voice that smells like granite in my head said, it wants to show you it doesn't need you and still wants you anyway. There's a difference. We stood there and did nothing. Sometimes that is the job. After a while, the rain returned, softer, like the cloud had remembered something and then said, oh, right this. The water in the saucer rippled and smoothed. We put our hands under our armpits like kids underdressed for picture day. The woods held us. The car held us. The drop cloth held the idea of a body. That was enough for that night. The trunk clicked, more of a burp than a tap. We got back in. I started the car. I drove home. The knocks came in a rhythm that didn't intend to be language and still was, thank you. Not yet. After that, the transit windows came every night for a week, always right at the blind hour when people were making a deal with the morning. I learned to keep my shoes by the door. I learned to keep water in the car. I learned how to drive streets I knew in an order I had never used before. The places it wanted? They were never dramatic. Not cemeteries. Not churches. Not the curb by mile 6, where everyone hydroplanes. They were sticky edges of the town. The back of the supermarket where the asphalt spider webs, the road behind the high school where the band kids kiss, the ditch by the spillway that always has a grocery cart in it. Everywhere I'd seen granite grit in the noon light without knowing it mattered. Everywhere people break small things and clean them up before anybody important sees. The rules grew up around the practice like vines. Some I had, some are new. Never drive a complete loop. Leave one break in your circle. Do not pass yourself. Don't count your own footsteps if you can hear an echo. Keep the cabin under 65 degrees Fahrenheit. The heat rule wasn't polite. It was physics disguised as a dad voice. On the fourth night, the blower broke for an hour, and in that hour a wetness gathered on the statue's upper lip that wasn't condensation, and when I reached to wipe it my fingers came away darker than water. I fixed the blower with a slap that felt like prayers, and the wetness evaporated like I had been an adult for 30 seconds. On the sixth night, we broke a rule on purpose, because if you follow rules without knowing what happens when you don't, the rules own you. We whistled, tiny, breath only, inside the car with the windows up. The sound went nowhere. The little two-note thing sat in the air like a bug in amber. A pulse shook the car. Not earthquake, not wind, a reprimand. The lights on the dash blinked off and back on once like a nod. I did not whistle again. I did not need to know the second punishment. On the seventh night, the mirror towel in the bedroom had slipped. The corner showed a triangle of glass. I didn't plan to look. You never plan to look. Your eyes have their own schedule. My gaze hit the triangle and my stomach carved itself new. The reflection showed the room wrong. Not reversed. Tilted, some angle you never get in the real world unless your camera hung from a ceiling in a horror movie. The statue wasn't where it was. It was closer. Its mouth was not open, but the seam around it looked like a person pressing their lips together to keep in a sob. I covered the mirror. I stand by that choice. Sometimes you choose the small mercy over the big truth. By the second week, the notes weren't on sticky paper anymore. They came as incident reports in my office inbox from Roland's desk email. No subject line. The body was a form filled with versions of the same instruction voice I'd learned to recognize. One had a little photo attached, an angle of my car I could not have taken without standing in the middle of the road behind it. A figure stood in the shoulder behind the car, half-sized, blur-limbed. The mouth seemed visible if you knew where to look. The second line of the report said, "If someone else collects your record, make a copy anyway." I printed it and put it in the glove compartment like I was a person who trusts paper. You want the incident that made the arbitrary rule important? It was the dumbest one. After midnight, use the passenger door. I forgot. Third week, tired like a stone had been rolled over me. I slid out the driver's side because I'd parked too close to a trash bin at the back of the little discount theater that plays movies 3 months late. The air outside the driver's side had a shape to it that made my shoulder go tight. The dome light stayed on an extra beat too long, like it didn't know whether to let me go. The trunk didn't just click, it burped open fully, lid flying up hard enough to shake the car. Something hit the driver door, gentle a reminder. I stepped around, hands up, mouth saying sorry in a voice I'd recognize anywhere. The trunk lid slammed shut with a sound like an argument. We used the passenger door the rest of the night and the rest of the year. We learned fast when it hurts us personally. Kelsey kept coming. Sometimes she sat in the car and read her phone and didn't whistle, and we went where we were told. Sometimes she stayed home and texted me stoplight check-ins I deliberately didn't read until we got to shoulders where the rules said it was okay to look at glass. Once she said, "You don't have to do this," and the anger that shot through me was embarrassing and huge. "No one else is going to," I said too loud. "I caused this." "You caused a broken head," she said. "You didn't." This was, she lifted her hands and let them fall. This was waiting for someone who listens to rules. She was meant to be with me the night the right arm arrived. The calendar alert pinged at 1:03 a.m. instead of 2. The transit window title had a little icon next to it now, a box with a diagonal slash like "not allowed, except the opposite." I dressed, shoes, coat, mask in my pocket, water. I texted, "You up?" She replied instantly because of course she was. "Hell no," and then, "Yes, wait for me." I waited in the car with the engine running and a sticky note on the dash I hadn't put there. Don't panic if she's late. If there are two of you, one must face away. Don't count. I put my hands flat on my legs and stared at my knuckles. She came down the stairs fast, hair in a knot, breath visible, eyes already angry because she gets protective when she's scared. We didn't talk. We drove to the cul-de-sac at the far edge of town where the city stopped pretending it would come back someday and put in sidewalks. There's an easement there with a dip where water sits like it's resting. We've all avoided it because the mud is boot-stealing mud. The knock came. I kept driving another block because the rule says never stop where you want to. I did the loop wrong then on purpose, left the circle open like a mouth, then reversed. When we stopped, the car did a little downward settle like something heavy had climbed into the passenger seat. The air got colder. We opened the passenger door because by now we know who we are. The right arm wasn't in the trunk. It wasn't on a cloth. It was in the ditch, half sunk in the mud because the world has a sense of humor that could be called consistency. "Don't you dare," Kelsey said, catching my sleeve. "Bare soil," I said. "Then don't," she said. "It's not soil," I said. "It's mud," which is the stupidest sentence anyone has ever used to convince themselves to do something. I stepped down. The mud accepted my shoe and then hugged it. I reached. The piece was heavier than it looked, slick with something that made my fingers go numb. I pulled. It came up like the world was letting me win on a technicality. The drop cloth waited like a good host. I set the arm down, and I swear to you the fracture edges approached each other like magnets that had just been given permission to be themselves. I went to my knees without meaning to. The epoxy was in my coat pocket because that's what my life is now, and my mouth said, "We're not doing this in the rain," but my hand were already setting, pressing, feathering. The seam took. The arm laid itself along the torso like a neighbor coming over to say hello. The hand, right hand, not splayed like the left, curled slightly, as if cupping what wasn't there yet. The air in the car drew itself in like a breath. That night, I did the face again, stupid as that sounds. Not because it needed it, but because repetition reinforces. I woke up with the drop cloth under me like I'd been trying to become part of it, and the apartment stank of epoxy in a way that tells you it's in your hair, under your nails, inside your lungs, not just your space. I called in sick to work and left a message that makes HR nod and mark a box. Roland emailed an incident report with no attached photo. It said, "Remember the deceptively safe one." I stared at that for a long time. Which one had seemed like nothing? The water. Of course. Offer water. The kind rule. The mother rule. The one I'd never thought to test, because cruelty is the only rule I don't break. I stopped offering water for a day. I didn't do it like a monster. I did it like a scientist. I turned off the sink. I left the glasses empty. I sat on the couch and did what addicts do. Waited for a sign that the world would make it okay for me to do the thing I was going to do anyway. The air dried out. The apartment cracked a little at the corners the way old paint does. My mouth got cottony. A sound came, not tap, not scrape, the sound of something rubbing stone on stone very, very slowly. It did not come from the statue. It came from the wall behind the couch. The drywall bulged just enough that I saw it in peripheral and jumped like a kid in a haunted house attraction. Behind that, inside the wall, a new sound, like a straw at the end of a glass when someone refuses to accept there's no more. I got up. I filled a cup. I felt stupid and so full of relief that I had to pretend I didn't. I set the water in front of the statue and said, "I'm sorry," to the room because I had done a small unkindness and been punished like a child with a timeout, and I wanted the punishment to be over. That night, when the transit window opened, the route took us past the circle of flowers zip-tied to the post again. The old flowers had been replaced by new. The rain had given them that varnish everything looks better under. I pulled over because I'm not an animal. I put my hazards on. I got out. I faced away while Kelsey faced the trunk. We heard the sound of someone walking barefoot on wet grass. There was no grass. There was cold asphalt and an easement and a ditch. The rule said if there are two of you, one must face away, and I cannot explain to you how much I did not want to disobey that for a flower memorial for a child I did not know. I did not turn. I did not whistle. I stood there with rain hitting my hood and counted nothing at all because the rule had told me not to count. Out of the corner of my eye saw the drop cloth move like breath. Out of the far corner of my eye, I saw something small and wrong lay its hand on the post and then lay nothing there. After, the plastic card zip tied to the post had new line written in bad handwriting under the name and the age and the dates. Thank you. The letters fought the plastic. They held anyway. I cried in the car without mouth. Sounds like a man in a movie who thinks he's being strong. Kelsey didn't touch me. She knows the difference between comfort and interruption. The final piece came from under my car seat. That's not metaphor. I was vacuuming because granite dust turns to a kind of guilt if you let it build. And the shop vac hit a clunk, and the hose drew something heavy enough to choke itself. And I shut it off and put my cheek on the floor mat like an idiot. And there in the dark was a shard with the slight concavity my hands recognized separate from my eyes. The corner under the right eye. I should have had it already. I hadn't. The car gives you what you can't live without when you can't admit you need it. I fit it by feel. I didn't use epoxy because there was none left, and I refused to leave the house to buy more because the transit window was due. It stuck anyway, kissing itself into place the way my brain had imagined those seams would. I stroked it once with 2 fingers and pulled my hand back the way a kid pulls back from a hot stove without yet knowing why some stoves are hot and some are not, and your hand doesn't care. That night, the mirror didn't need a towel anymore because there was no reflection. Not black, not fog, just the sense that glass was not a material that existed in my apartment. It was a relief like putting weight down you didn't know you'd been holding. The air got so cold I could see it leave me in a steady river. The calendar alert went off with a sound like ice cracking on a lake that has decided to give you your friend back. I texted Kelsey, and she texted one word back, go. I drove alone because everything told me to. The rules did not move in to stop me. The rules walked me to the car. The route it wanted was no route at all. It wanted straight lines through places built for circles. We went out past the interstate that is a river of red at the hours people go to work and a rope of white at the hours they come home. We took the road that stops being plowed after a point and then keeps going because the land says, keep going. I turned my lights off for 1,000 feet because the dashboard note said, do not bring light, and I didn't argue with that voice anymore. At the dead center of nowhere, there was a field, and at the dead center of the field, there was a rock I have seen since childhood because this town is very proud of its glacial erratic and the plaque that explains geology as if geology is a civic virtue. I parked in the dirt the way the rules said not to. I put the car in park and said, I'm sorry, before I did anything else. The trunk lifted itself to that first click. The drop cloth was there because the drop cloth is always there now. I carried it to the rock like I was setting a picnic for a god who does not eat. I spread it. I laid out the water. The stone smell met the outside stone smell without a fight. The air stripped the inside of my nose. I didn't call Kelsey. I limit the witnesses I asked to share the weight with me. I faced away because there was no one else to do it. The sound of stone on cloth came, and I swallowed against it. When I turned back, the statue wasn't there. That's not a trick line. It wasn't just not where I'd put it. It wasn't anywhere I can point at with my hand in that field and say it was the negative space around that. The drop cloth had creases like it had been folded around weight, then unfurled. The water glasses were empty and icing at the edges. The rock had no new marks. The plaque said the same funny thing about how long it has been here, which is longer than any of us deserve. I stood there with my mouth open in the way a person does when their body wants definitions and the night doesn't intend to produce any. On the way back to the car, I saw prints in the dirt that weren't mine. Border, half-sized, 5 splayed toes. I put my shoe down next to one. I'll be honest, I didn't laugh. I considered it. I didn't. The trunk shut itself with that polite burp that had become a kind of affection. I drove home without a knock. I slept on the couch like someone waiting for someone who's already come home. The morning after, the towels came down by themselves. I found them folded on the chair. The blue tape had let go in even strips. The mirror gave me my face again, and it was a face I recognized even if I didn't want to. There was a sticky note stuck to the fridge in my handwriting this time. Not a perfect match, but close enough to make my stomach tighten. It said, "Procedure concluded. Retain a record. Keep water on hand. If you hear tapping, answer only when you're not alone. Temperature below 65 degrees Fahrenheit at dawn for 1 week." The deceptively safe one stuck in my head like a piece of food between teeth. Keep water on hand. Because it is safe, we forget. Because it is kindness, we get lazy. I poured 2 glasses and set them down, one in the living room and one by the bedroom closet. Habit formed a groove. I kept to it. The glasses didn't empty as fast. Sometimes they stayed full all day. Sometimes I found them half gone and felt weirdly proud, like a host with a guest who is picky and has finally decided to eat. Kelsey came over with a bag of soup and an expression that said I could be normal about this. I can. She didn't mention the towels. She noticed the way the apartment felt less elbowed. She set the soup on the counter and said, "So?" Transit concluded, I said, making it sound like a project at work, like an expense report. "Can you say human words?" she said, a little sharp. I told her about the field, the rock, the absence that wasn't absence. I told her without the jumps, the way I'm telling you now, in a line like that's the only shape that makes me feel safe. She listened with her hands around a mug of tea she did not drink. When I was done, she put the mug down and said, "Do you feel better?" And I admitted the thing I did not want to admit. "Yes." She nodded, and the nod contained a lot. "Are you done?" she asked. "I don't know," I said, because some religion lodges in you and sets its tent pegs and tendon and moves when you move. Maybe. We went out for fries as a joke on the night. On the way down the hall, someone had stuck an incident report to the stairwell door. In the little descriptions/notes box, the handwriting was tidy. It said, "Take care with your mirrors." That evening, in the diner, the big mirror behind the counter showed me and Kelsey and the waitress and the old men who treat that place like church. It did not show anyone standing at my shoulder with a half-sized wrongness. I ate my fries and tasted salt, not pennies. I let veins relax. I didn't know I'd been tensing. There are aftermaths to every miracle that are boring. You take the painter's tape off the walls and learn which paint is cheap. You put the drop cloth in the closet and know you have made a space in your life for it the way people make spaces for grief, which is to say, you pretend it has a schedule. You go to work and the receptionist says, "You look better," and you say, "Better than what?" And she laughs like you've been charming on purpose. Roland slides a copy of your own incident report across the desk to you, and on the back is a sticky note in his tidy, bored man's handwriting. "You done, man?" And you write, "I'll tell you if I ever get to be." He reads it. He snaps his gum. He nods once like we successfully moved a couch through a door. I kept the temperature below 65 degrees Fahrenheit at dawn for a week because my body would not let me disobey that one. On the 8th day, I cranked the heat and stood in the living room with my shirt off like a lizard and thought about sunlight. The glasses of water stayed full. The apartment smelled less like dust in a museum. I took the towels off and did not fold them with the attention of a prayer. I made the couch a couch again. I kept driving. I'm not the best driver, but now I drive like an altar boy. I do the speed limit. I signal like I'm demonstrating it. I do not look in the rear view at red lights on empty roads. I do not pass myself when I loop the block to find parking. If I hear knocking, I roll the windows down to let sound out and strangers in. When it rains, I set water by the door. A month later, in the grocery lot, a chunk of granite hit my shoe. The sound is unmistakable once you've learned it. I looked down. Pebble, not carved. Natural. It had the color. It had the smooth in the wrong places. I picked it up. I felt for the kiss of fracture seam and found none. I dropped it back into the gutter and stood there with my hands on my hips like a man in a sitcom who has realized he is the punchline. My heart did not kick like a rabbit. My mouth did not fill with pennies. A kid in a stroller looked at me and then grinned with his whole face, unbroken and open. His mother said, "Say hi," without looking up from her phone, and he obliged with a wave that had all 5 fingers splayed. In the trunk of my car, the notes curled at the edges. I left them. Some religions don't want you to proselytize. They want you to remember. On the inside of the trunk lid, in my own handwriting now, "Too neat to be mine," which is the trick it plays, I wrote, "Take responsibility. Don't make excuses. Keep water. Use the passenger door after midnight. Don't whistle." They are all arbitrary, and none of them are. The deceptively safe one, the water, sits in the middle where my eye lands first. I don't forget. You want an ending, the big cinematic, the statue stepping down and taking my hand and saying my name in a voice that sounds like gravel. It doesn't happen that way. This is the story I have, the quiet and the rules, and the way responsibility turned into a ritual that fed something and also fed me. The world is full of things broken, and someone has to be the one who glues them together and sits quietly with them while they set. I was that someone for a while. I will be again. That's not punishment. It's the trade I make to keep being a human who can stand to drive. When I put the last shard under the right eye in with my fingers, the seam kissed, and my body let out a breath I couldn't have held any longer. I think that was the moment I stopped being the person who tells you this story from the middle and started being the person who can tell you from the far side. I still check the mirrors. I still stare too long at door handles. I still keep towels folded exact and painter's tape in the drawer and epoxy in the cabinet, because you don't throw away your tools when the job is done. The job is never done. You live with that or you lie to yourself. Last week, at a red light on an empty road, I closed my eyes because I could not trust them not to go where my fear wanted. I waited for green. I felt the softest tap-tap from the trunk, and I smiled like a man who has decided to choose love over terror. I reached back my hand between the seats without looking and held it open, palm up. I didn't feel anything touch me. I didn't need to. The light went green. I went. I know exactly how it should look. Don't ask me how. I've seen it before. I may not be the best driver, but I take responsibility for my mistakes.